time. Whenever I tell somebody I'm a Green Party member, they say, but can you win? Like, what's the point of doing this if you can't win? I have my own stump speech. I have my own arguments. But as the leader of sorts of the Green Party, at least as the nominee, what's your answer to people that say, look, the highest you've ever polled is 4 or 5%. I think in June of 2016, you know, when you get down to election time, Green Party, you guys get 1% of the vote, you get 2% of the vote, and those corporate candidates, no matter whether we like them or not, they ultimately are going to win anyway. What's the point of all this?
Well, I mean, there are a gazillion points. And usually what I say is stop regurgitating the talking points of your political abuser. It is like being in an abusive relationship where people who are, who are still under the sway here of this political partner, are accepting the most ridiculous nonsense as like some God-given wisdom. And it's frankly, it's baloney. And it's like breaking up with an abusive relationship and making excuses for it and saying, oh, it'll get better next year, or, oh, I have to do it. Oh, I don't have any other choices. It's like, get a life, stand up and reclaim your life and your future. Reject this propaganda of powerlessness, because that's what it is. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. The demand has to be there or things aren't going to move. So just by making the demand, that is a victory. That is a precondition to actually changing altering our trajectory towards doomsday, which is where we're headed right now on every front. And I mean that especially in terms of people's everyday lives and whether you have a job and whether you can afford a roof over your head. So it's like, stand up and fight for ourselves. But, the companion to Frederick Douglass' quote is Alice Walker's quote, which is that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We've got the power, and we have it more than ever right now, to look at 68% of Americans, according to Reuters, who want an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution to the genocide. People don't need to be persuaded. People don't need to be persuaded that they deserve healthcare as a human right, under a very practical, pragmatic Medicare for all system, which would also help redistribute the cost onto the backs of those who are most able to pay it and actually be a cost reduction for people who are really overstressed, and in fact saves us $500 billion a year. We can end student debt, and make public higher education free. There are all these things that we can do. There is enormous support for it. You put that support together in a moment like now, which is really a perfect storm for political transformation. And we have the capacity not only to make an impact, not only to build, which is how most movements grow, and most political parties, they grow. So you got to start with 1% and 2% and then get to 6% and then get to 15% and on from there. But
this isn't just an abstract idea. I mean, there's federal funding that's attached when we get a certain percentage of the vote. I mean, there's an actual legitimate argument for voting here.
Oh, absolutely. If we get to 5%, we have basically millions of dollars. I think it's $20 million to kick off the next presidential campaign. So there are absolute concrete results, as well as, in my view, there is a real practical path forward, given that we have 3 genocide candidates at a time the American people abhors genocide. And if you have a 4-way race, and one of them is bringing together a whole lot of movements, including students and young people. And by the way, we are running now 22% in, I think it's Wisconsin, among people 30 and under. So word is getting out. Yes, word is getting out. And I think in Wisconsin, we're at actually 8% all total among all players. So where people hear about our campaign, we start coming up in the polls. And this is what they're most terrified of, they being the powers that be, the powers of war on Wall Street. They're trying to suppress us to keep us off the ballot, because then people find out. And that is their worst fear. That's why the Democrats are going to extraordinary lengths right now. They've been advertising, in fact, for infiltrators to basically report back on, and to develop strategies to stop third parties. They announced long ago that they had hired an army of lawyers to try to throw us off the ballot. This is what they typically do. And they exercise what I think should be called fraud, in order to do that. And that is now proven in a court of law. They didn't call it fraud because, well, for all sorts of political reasons, it's not called fraud, but they call it dirty hands, that the Democrats operated with dirty hands in North Carolina, where they impersonated the Green Party and called people who had signed the petition for Matthew Hoh, a wonderful Senate candidate in North Carolina. They impersonated Greens and called the signers and said, hey, we're the Green Party. We want you to take your name off the petition. We decided we shouldn't run Matt Hoh. Well, they happened to call the co-chair of the party who recorded the conversation, and that was brought as evidence in court. This is what they do, and it's not, like some unusual exception. This is what they commonly do. And this is the kind of dirty tricks and corruption that the Democratic Party has to resort to in order, because they're terrified of actually having to face the music and have a debate and be held to account. And that's actually what we need to do in this election. It's a perfect time for it.